Again, Brian Flores, the former Miami Dolphins head coach, filing a class action lawsuit versus the NFL and a number of teams alleging racism in the hiring process by those multiple teams. Let's bring Adam Schefter back in here because, Adam, there's another layer to this lawsuit involving the Dolphins.
Yeah. Well, there are a few layers to this lawsuit, Laura, and as people read through it, they will find more and more information. But in one element of it, he accuses the Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, of trying to incentivize him to lose games by paying him $100,000 for each game he loses. Now, why would that be? But this is part of the lawsuit. He also goes after the Denver Broncos in the lawsuit and says in the lawsuit about John Elway, Joe Ellis, and others that were late for an interview, a head coaching interview, that they, quote-unquote, looked completely disheveled, and it was obvious that they had been drinking heavily the night before. So he goes after Stephen Ross. He goes after the men that hired at the Denver Broncos. He goes after the New York Giants based on texts from Bill Belichick telling him in these texts that are part of the evidence that the Giants are naming Brian Daboll as their head coach before they even interviewed Brian Flores. So, again, there are a lot of accusations that obviously he has been holding on to, and he decided that he was going to file that lawsuit, which was filed today, again, seeking unspecified damages, and this story is going to go on and on. The Giants already have released a statement saying that they felt like they had a fair and diverse hiring process that went down to the quote-unquote 11th hour before they decided to name Brian Daboll. So that is the Giants version. There is evidence in the Brian Flores version, and we'll let lawyers and the courts figure out what's right and what's wrong here.
Yeah, but again, Adam, this hiring process, still with 5 openings around the NFL, is still underway, and this throws certainly a huge wrench in it and obviously puts Brian Flores in a situation that he felt he needed to step forward and say something. That Giants statement that Adam just referenced there said, "We are pleased and confident with the process that resulted in the hiring of Brian Daboll. We interviewed an impressive and diverse group of candidates. The fact of the matter is Brian Flores was in the conversation to be our head coach until the 11th hour. Ultimately, we hired the individual we felt was most qualified to be our next head coach." I want to read one more thing, Dan, before we get your comments here. A message from Brian Flores was sent to the NFL for comment, was not immediately returned. Brian Flores saying, "God has gifted me with a special talent to coach the game of football, but the need for change is bigger than my personal goals," he says. "In making the decision to file the class action complaint today, I understand that I may be risking coaching the game that I love and that has done so much for my family and me. My sincere hope is that by standing up against systemic racism in the NFL, others will join me to ensure that positive change is made for generations to come." Dan, you heard what you heard what Adam said about the Dolphins' angle in all of this, and alleging from Brian Flores' perspective that he was offered money to tank games.
Yeah.
What can you say about that?
Well, before that, kudos to Brian Flores for the courage to kind of do this and be convicted enough to do it. So good for him. I think, hearing Adam talk about Stephen Ross and the allegation of the $100,000, Mina and Ryan remember this. I remember watching that season, and there were games, and we had conversations about it where we
all said it.
Yeah, we said, this team looks like it's tanking. Like, the football team looks like it's trying to lose games. And we were crushed over it, blah, blah, this and that. So, I'm not saying, it certainly looked like that at moments. And I remember a Monday night football game against the Steelers vividly going, my goodness, that does not look like a team that is ready to play football. There's a lot to unpack here when it comes to it. I hope that, the truth comes out. I want Marcus to talk because I think it's important for people to hear Marcus say. So the people that are on the show are like family. We're like a family. I think we learn a lot from each other in conversation. Not long ago, I don't know, a month or 2 months. I don't want to put you on the spot, big fellow, but I'm going to do it. We were having a conversation in the green room about, I think, a situation that is attached to this. And you really educated me on how important representation is when it comes to a hiring process. I think it's important for everyone to hear your perspective on that.
Because, Dio, thank you for saying that, first of all. And we all do have these conversations, and we talk about a plethora of things. But the bottom line is representation is important, not only for different voices and ideas, but to also know what that culture is, to understand what this person is influenced by, where they come from, understanding the things that they've gone through, some of their life experience. The issue has always been, when we have this conversation in any sector, the issue has always been, well, if you don't have anybody there to speak on your behalf, how will anybody ever learn who you are? Yeah. How will anybody ever learn your differences? So that's the conversation that we had, and obviously we can go deeper because you and I talked for a long time and a number of days about it. But the bottom line is, when you isolate and you get in your silos, you learn nothing. You're only comfortable with what you know. And that's why representation is important for Black, Hispanic, all cultural differences, all people that come from different ways. Because if you don't have a voice, you will be shut out, and no one will care about the opinion of you and the people you represent.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.